Aha. Or if it's gonna crash on me, I don't know. Okay. Am I live? You don't see me. Oh, there I am. Okay. So now YouTube. Let's check in with YouTube to see if I'm live on YouTube. You know, it has a little bit of a different time frame. I'm frozen. I'm semi-live. All right. Go check my YouTube channel just there. This is one of those new things. I tried to go live at 3 o'clock and I ended up starting late, but it seems that my video is lost in the internet land. It's Agate private, and let's see if we are live in both areas. That would be awesome. I would love to hear just Agate Private School. Okay. So if you are watching me live on Facebook, please check in and tell me that you're here. So I just did a whole show that, oh, it looks like maybe I'm live now on YouTube. Isn't that wonderful? Let's see. Okay, so now I'm live. Welcome. I'm going to start it now. Hopefully this will help get rid of the other missed technical issues one. Hello, Michelle. So nice to see you. And hi, Michelle. Thank you for checking in. I am looking forward to having people chime in and ask questions because I'm way better at conversation than just trying to talk for an hour. But I did it in the last thing. So if you'd like to be a guest on the show, if you'd like to ask your questions live, you can use that link that's right at the bottom of the screen there. And also, if you would like to have a one-to-one or group Zoom with other families that are asking questions that you probably all have the same questions, which is very common. And yes, Michelle says, I am live. Yay. Okay. So here is the link again if you want to join as a guest. And alrighty, I'm gonna start this thing again. It's been wonderful. I just did this, so I've had the rehearsal. I'm going to introduce myself. I am Gail Hanlon, and I am a veteran homeschooler, and I say that because it's been almost 30 years that I've been doing alternative education. And I am a public speaker for different conventions and workshops and groups of people that have the same interest of alternative education. My primary focus is on getting control and being in control of your children's education, or regaining control of your children's education. I like to use that term because you are always, as a parent, you are the best, first, most important educator for your child. Nobody else on the planet. All right, so here we go. Let's try this. I was born in England. I want to tell you a little bit about myself because uh, you might be asking, who is this person and why are they trying to, who do they think they are to tell me what I might need to know? I was born in England, raised in Brazil and Montreal. I went to multiple types of schools, all full day schools, half day schools, boarding school. Um, I flew from Montreal to England to go to boarding school for several years, an all girls private boarding school. And I was in high school in Montreal and in St. Catharines and locally, and elementary school, a year-round schooling in Brazil. So I've experienced multitude of different forms of education, including a year or so where I did not go to school, maybe 2 years actually. But my grandfather was a scientist, so he basically took me under his wing and I watched and observed him in his laboratory. So the big takeaway from that was that it was not the schools, the school board, the Ministry of Education of whatever country I happened to be in that determined where I would get my education. It was from my grandfather and my grandmother, who were my parents at the time. So, and my sister. So, so having said that, it was different than most families who are conditioned to just say, yeah, you put your kids in school. It's just what you do because you don't really know anything else. Um, People used to ask me a lot, when they'd see me out with my kids in the middle of the day, why are your kids sick or something? And I'm like, no, we homeschool. And they'd say, well, why did you decide to homeschool? And I would, after a million times of answering that question and defending my choices, um, I started to turn it around. And I would ask other parents that I saw at the playground, what school does your child go to? And they'd tell me, oh, what grade are they in? And they'd tell me. And then I'd ask, why did you choose public school? And they'd look at me like I had two heads. And And the majority of times, the answer was, "Isn't that what you're supposed to do?" It is astounding to me how many families don't know their rights and the options that they have. So, um, that being said, a little bit of background about how I came to homeschooling, unschooling, deschooling, world schooling, whatever you want to call it. Alternative learning is what I call it. Um, and as you saw in the post, hopefully, if you've seen the post, learning happens, school is optional. So, what do I mean when I say that? You are sitting at home wondering, you know, I've had my kids now all this time. I didn't think I could do it, but I kinda like it, and I wanna keep going. If that's where you are, or I'm worried about sending my kids back to school. There's so many things, like, I'm not qualified to teach them. How will I know they're keeping up with the curriculum that they're supposed to be? What about socialization? What are the 3 most common questions that everybody in the last 100 years has asked? Um, so I'm going to introduce you to 4 really awesome resources because, like Cesar Millan in the Dog Whisperer series, he did not train the dogs, he trained the owners of the dogs, the parents of the dogs. So think about it that way. You are entering this new realm and assessing whether it's right for you, whether it's the best for your family. How do I work and have my kids home? What are all my options? There is so much information, and getting conflicting information from neighbors and relatives and friends who may not know the the realities of what the options are. So let's start with one. I'm not qualified to teach. Yes, you are. What makes you qualified? You are their parent. You are the person that helped them learn a language. You helped them and assisted them and encouraged them when they wanted to walk. Um, you help them learn how to use a knife and fork, or um, know when it's safe and not safe to cross a road, to hold a hand, to be safe and look both ways when you cross the road. All the life skills that your child, learning a language is the hardest thing on the planet. And you did that already with your child. So you are the best and the most motivated person and the most capable person to help your child learn. Nobody else, no teacher, nobody in the system is going to have more love, more um, invested in how your child does than you. So, yes, you are qualified to help your child learn. Um, then you might say, what about the curriculum? How do I know what I'm doing? Where do I get it? Well, there's a couple of things. One, there is so much out there, it's going to be super overwhelming. So there are some things that we're going to go over in a few minutes just to help you, clear all the dead wood and the challenges aside. So, curriculum that they do in schools, if it didn't work for your child in school, then why would it work at home? Curriculums are designed for children enrolled in school, not for anybody else. You are not required to do any of that curriculum if you're not enrolled in school. So if you are outside of school, you do not have to do it. Does not mean it's not important. Does not mean it's not things that you're going to want to do, because there's so much there. One of the examples I used was that when it occurred to me, I was in high school. I had 8 different teachers for 8 different subjects. And I, as one individual, was expected to learn and retain and get tested and remember everything that each one of those teachers taught me during the day. We didn't have a semester system in that school. So 8 different teachers teaching me 8 different things, and I'm supposed to remember it all. I am one person, and I have to remember all of that. But each of those teachers only had to retain the one subject that they were teaching me. Now, yes, of course, somebody's going to say, well, teachers teach different things. Absolutely. But they're not learning it for the first time, probably not interested in it, and it isn't relevant to them. So if you remember school, if you had to write a test right now and tell me what a preposition was, could you do it? As soon as we take the tests, we're out of there. That information is out of there unless it's super relevant to us. So when I thought about that being, hi, wait a minute, this is a disconnect here. This is way too much information for one person to take on. Yeah, I love certain things, but it's way too much. And I loved school. So that's, the oddity from the get-go. if your child's been having difficulty at school and you've got them home now over COVID, and you've realized, hey, my child's done in 2 hours what they would have done in a week or 2 at school, you're realizing the truth of the matter. Children learn. People learn. Learning happens. School is optional. The third question that people ask, what about socialization? Well, what about socialization? First thing that people usually say is that schools are there for you to learn, not for you to socialize. Let's talk about bullying. Are your children getting segregated or, um, are they being hurt by other kids vocally or otherwise for their own choices, or how they look or what they wear or any of that? Does not happen so much at home. I mean, not that, as a parent, I haven't said you're wearing that, it happens, but it's generally not in a bullying situation. So you have to really think about what positive social situations do you want your child to have? What is going to help them experience a positive social environment? And then be prepared to offer that. So those 3 top things that parents feel are, I'm not qualified to teach, which now you know you are. 2, how will I know my child's keeping up? Those curriculums that are designed by we don't know, reasons we do not know, who decided what should be at each grade level and what ages should be learning what. Who decided that? I ask you freely to go ask anybody you know in the system who designed the curriculum and why. So those are arbitrary sets of information at certain levels and ages that are only applicable to children in the system. So when you get that fear that you can't do what they do at the school, you can't possibly get all that resources, all that information, and ram it into your kid's head, you're not expected to. It's not natural. It's not natural learning. I'm going to share with you a quote from one of the resources that I'm going to be giving you. Growing Without Schooling. Fabulous, fabulous magazine since 1977. So when I said at the beginning that you are not the first and not the last person to be asking yourself the same questions, you can go back and read all those decades of the magazines that parents just like you have been answering and asking questions about for a long, long time. Okay, so here, I'm going to show this in a minute. So anyway, your kids don't want, and couldn't stand 6 hours of your teaching a day, even if you wanted to do that much, which most working families can't. So if it didn't work there, don't bring it home. There are numerous options. You, as your child's best teacher, will know what works best? How does your child learn? If you want to, look at it this way. What do teachers do? How do they assess your child? They observe them. They record what they do. They make assumptions and educated guesses. And they experience your child in the situation. So when you're at home with your children, you know them best. They might not be learning what you want them to learn, but they are learning. For an example, I was out with some of the kids and we were going through a mall, and a little door on the way to the bathroom was ajar, and there was some whirring sound going on in the background and behind the door. One of my students, actually, one of my daughters said, "What are they doing there?" And I said, "I don't know. Let's go find out." We went and knocked on the door, and the gentleman inside was making dentures. And I said, "My daughter's asking what the noise is, what you're doing in there." And he proceeded to spend 45 minutes with her explaining how he made the dentures, what they were made out of, the whole process. That would have never been on my curriculum plan. My daughter was fascinated. She was riveted. She was so interested in learning what was going on. And it was self-directed. She chose. She had the interest, and I followed her lead. So that's one of the most important things when you're looking at keeping your children at home. You are not to be stressed. Don't add stress from outside influences. Don't put it on yourself that you have to do a certain curriculum or a certain amount of work. You don't have to sit down with them for 6 hours going through all this stuff. You will find that they learn much quicker and you spend less time with them. And that's okay. I'm also going to be sharing with you later an article called The Art of Doing Nothing. One of the best gifts you can give your child is the gift of boredom, the gift of allowing them to let their mind think things that they never anticipated. We never anticipated hearing a noise that would prompt my daughter to be interested in the making of dentures. But those are the things that we as parents would recognize in our child. And instead of saying, "Oh, no, 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 you don't have you don't have time to learn that. Let's go to the next thing. Because I say you have to do this, or the curriculum says you have to be doing this, this, and this." That's not important right now. That's where it becomes tricky because it's not natural. And that's where children learn to hate learning. We have been conditioned to believe that learning only happens when you're in a school building being taught by somebody else. Learning happens. School is optional. May not be what you're expecting them to learn, but they will learn. And with your support and with your energy and love and attention, they will do wonderfully. Here's this article, another quote. When I'm trying to stimulate their interest in something, the very artificiality of the endeavor and rudeness, really, I have no business even trying, builds a barrier between us. But when I am sharing something I really love with them because I also really love them, all barriers are down and we are communicating intimately. These are excerpts from Growing Without Schooling magazine, and I would highly recommend, and I'm going to introduce you to these articles now. Hold on a second here. I just have to, okay, there you go. Here and share. Okay, so I'm going to bring this up in the stream now. This is John Caldwell Holt, a fabulous author, learner. He is the person who coined the term unschooling. So the Growing Without Schooling magazine website YouTube channel, which I would be going to now if I were you in another tab, but you can do that later. I will post the link. Helping children learn and explore in the world is best seen as a branch of natural science, like trying to raise exotic plants or little-known animals. Some of his books, they're all are wonderful. Learning All the Time, How Children Learn. There's also How Children Fail, and tons and tons of resources here. The Growing Without Schooling magazine, you can get all the back issues in PDF, everything you ever wanted to know, all the questions, all the difficulties, all the challenges, all the joys and unexplained things. You will find everything in the decades of magazines. I'm not saying you have to go read them all, but you might want to skim some of them, look at some of the titles, watch some of the YouTube videos. You'll be glad you did. Okay. Fear is one of the biggest difficulties that we have as parents. Fear of not being good enough, fear of not knowing what to do. In order to chase away fear, all you need to do is let in love. Love for your child motivates you, and you will do wonderfully well. I want to be encouraging because I know that you as a parent and every other homeschooler I've ever met does not remove their child from school to harm them or give them less education. They do it so that they can get a better education and have more opportunities in the future. Okay, so as I said earlier, it's about training yourself. And here's one of the things that I have had it happen to me in my background that helped me think through these things. When my daughter was becoming school age, my oldest daughter, I had already begun asking the questions of, to myself, well, what were we going to do? I was a stay-at-home mom. I had a home daycare because I didn't want to miss a second. I would have gone back to work the day her first tooth came in. And I was at home just joyously experiencing that with her and not back at work. Some people might want to be back at work I worked from home, running a home daycare for 25 years. I purchased a small alternative private school so that the children that I had in my childcare could continue on with me in my home as an alternative private school. Yes, it is legal. Um, so when I was first looking at what options, and this is where you are right now, is what options are you gonna, you're concerned about your children's safety with COVID, and rightly so. We do have to be careful. We've seen what's happened in places where they've opened up too soon, and we want to avoid that problem. So I was at a point where I was asking every place that I was going to think of possibly sending my child, public school, separate school, Waldorf, Montessori. First question I asked was, what is your philosophy of education? You can't really ask that question until you have defined for yourself what your own philosophy of education is. How do you see your children progressing, and have you explored options and understand what those options mean? So I asked, what is your philosophy of education? Who designed your curriculum and why? And how could you guarantee that my child will work at her optimum level and not be pushed ahead or held behind? Those are the three questions I asked all those different types of schools. And they looked at me like I had two heads. And some of them were downright rude, saying, "Who do you think you are to be asking those questions?" I'm her parent. I did not breed a child so that you could make a wage. I was an activist. I was a proponent of knowledge, understanding, reasoning, finding out important things. So those three questions solidified in my mind that I could do from home what I envisioned as the perfect education or learning environment for my children and for the children I cared for. The parents came to me and said, "Hey, we love what you're doing. Can you keep doing it? We don't want to put them in school." So I acquired a private school. I'll go into that a little bit now. But before I do that, you're going to probably ask yourself, is it legal? Can I just take my kids out of school? Can I just not return them to school? Well, you may hear from many people that you have to write a letter to the school that and identify that you are homeschooling. The Ministry of Education calls that Policy 131. It's actually Memorandum Policy 131. It is not law. It is not law. Policy Program Memorandum 131, released in 2002, is most important change in school board home education relations. I'm going to bring this up and show you this on the second or another one of the four places I'm going to refer you to today to do your professional education and professional development for knowing what to do with your children at home. The Ontario Federation of Teaching Parents, ontariohomeschool.org. Policy 131, reminder, policy is not law, says that a parent should send a letter to the school letting them know that they're homeschooling. You are not required by law to do that. It is your choice. That's a whole other conversation for a debate. I'm going to go to the OFTP home here so that you can see they've been going on for, decades. I'm pretty sure around maybe 35, 40 years. So here on the OFTP website, to start what do I need to do to start homeschooling my kids in Ontario? This is where you can get the most accurate information. Now remember, words are really important when you're reading things. A lot of people have been told by school officials that they have to send this letter, but that's not the wording of the policy at all. Make sure you read the policy, read the sections of the Education Act, and know your rights. If you're not willing to put the time in to educate yourself about what your rights are and what you want to do, then it may be a challenge, because you don't want to just say, oh yeah, somebody told me I was okay to do this. You want to be able to back it up. You want to be able to have your facts in place. So no, you are not required by law to notify the schools. I don't know how things are going to be coming this term. Nobody can know that. However, there has been some research done over COVID, and whereas prior to COVID, between 1% to 4% of all school-age children were being homeschooled. I'm going to say that again. 1% to 4% of all school-age children were being homeschooled. If you want to know how we know that, put a question in the comments and I'll answer that. So some of the surveys that have been done while we've been quarantined have shown that 40% of all families questioned will remain schooling at home or alternative learning. That's a lot. And it may mean different types of alternatives, which everybody has, but they don't know they have. If you are not from Ontario, you really need to check out your own state or province's laws, education acts, that kind of thing. Be sure that you're aware and knowledgeable about the regulations, and make sure it's from a qualified source. You can go on all these homeschooling message boards and ask the question, but you don't know who's responding, what their experience is, whether it's accurate or not. A lot of people strongly believe, simply because they've been told, that you have to send a letter to the Board of Education or to the school that you're declaring your homeschooling. And that is just simply not true. But it is what they believe strongly because somebody else told them that, but they haven't checked it for themselves. So be very cautious when you're asking for advice on Facebook pages and social media about homeschooling, because you want to get it from a reputable, experienced source. That's one of the reasons that I'm mentioning the Ontario Federation of Teaching Parents. They have the experience, they have decades of families working with them. I was formerly the secretary of the OFTP, and you don't want to miss a beat, but you also don't want to throw yourself into a frenzy of fear. As we talked about with the curriculum, the best advice I can give anybody, and the best advice that I got, was relax, relax, relax. It is false that kids lose knowledge during the summer months or during COVID. Your kids are not falling behind. They are learning. It may just not be what you had in mind or what was in the curriculum, but they are learning, and you can assist them with that. Okay, so I'm gonna switch out here to the third really great resource, which is, and I'm gonna scroll up here back to the beginning, the Homeschooling Global Summit, which just occurred from June 29th to July 8th, 9 days of 40 amazing speakers. And I would highly, highly recommend you go and listen to Peter Gray, Jerry Mintz, Blake Bowles, and coming down here, Pat Ferenga, who is the person who manages and is responsible for continuing the legacy of John Holt on Growing Without Schooling. So you really want to listen to those people. They know what they're talking about. Okay, so next is, who says that you can keep your kids home? Are you allowed to do that? Yes. Short answer, yes. Here's why. Section 21(2)(a) of the Education Act. This is the education law for Ontario. Check out your laws if you're in another location. Section 21(2)(a) states, a person is excused from attendance at school, providing they're receiving satisfactory instruction at home or elsewhere. I'm going to go back over that. A person is excused. Who excuses? Not may be excused. Who excuses a child from school? A person from school? Well, not the teacher, not the principal, not the Board of Education, not the Ministry of Education. You, the parent. A child is excused. Sorry, they did change the language. Only the one word in this act. In all the 30 years that I've been doing this, they changed it from a child to a person. So a person doesn't say maybe. I've been misquoted so many times, and so many other people have been too when they've stated this section of the act. A person is excused from attendance at school, providing they are receiving satisfactory instruction. That term, satisfactory instruction, not defined by the Education Act. Why? Because what might be satisfactory for a Hasidic Jewish family might not be for a Muslim family. It also is different depending on whether a child has autism or is deaf or has any sort of learning challenge. So, satisfactory instruction at home or elsewhere. Yes, that means you can educate your child, not just in the kitchen, not just in the living room, not in the den or the rec room, not just on the anywhere in the world. You can help your child learn at home or elsewhere. That also means that it might not be you. If you have to go to work and your children are with Aunt Rita or Uncle Joe and they are helping them and taking care of them while you're at work, that is satisfactory instruction at home or elsewhere. No, they cannot come into your home and accuse you of not providing satisfactory instruction. If you want to discuss having relatives or family members or neighbors or other people that may oppose you keeping your kids at home, they may not understand all the things that are involved. I'm happy to have that conversation on a private Zoom. Just put in the link in the comments, Zoom, and I will get in touch with you with a Zoom link. So there you have it. Section 21(2)(a) of the Education Act gives you the right to excuse your child from school, providing satisfactory instruction is provided at home or elsewhere. You determine whether it's at home, whether it's elsewhere, who's providing it. I don't know ballet. My daughter had 12 years of Russian ballet dancing lessons, violin lessons, harp lessons. I don't know those things. The most important thing that I think I can relate to you is one, the confidence that yes, you can do it. No, you are not obliged by anybody else's regulations or requirements. You decide what those are. Now, the fear part of this from outside looking in is, oh, well, how can they possibly provide appropriate education? They're not a teacher. That person does not understand the rights and all the things that are related to liberated learning. So the fourth place I want to send you, and I will put all of these in the comments, all of these links will be in the comments, is, and I'm gonna switch back to the first page here, the Teenage Liberation Handbook. Even if you don't have teenagers, even if you just got married and haven't even had kids yet, read this book. It will be reprinted next year. Grace has been reviewing it